husband and I certainly have been blessed in this weekend, and we're very grateful for the privilege of having been here and for all the wonderful Southern hospitality that we've experienced. As for the other 4 Ecuador widows that have been asked about, I hardly ever see them. Once in a while we bump into them on our trips. Mary Lou McCulley has not remarried. She lives near Seattle, and her 3 sons live in the area. She's recently retired from having been a doctor's assistant. Barbara Udarian was the one who stayed the longest in Ecuador. She came back to the States maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and she now lives near her son in Florida. Olive Fleming, Barbara Udarian is the other one who is not remarried. Then Olive Fleming Liefeld is married to a professor at Trinity Seminary near Chicago, Deerfield, Illinois. And Marge St. Vanderpoy lives in Florida. Her husband and she represent World Radio Missionary Fellowship and also Back to the Bible, so they do quite a bit of traveling. Marge is the only one that I ever hear from. I usually get maybe 2 or 3 postcards from Marge per year. And the only time that we've ever been together, the 5 of us, since 1957, was when Pat Robertson had us all on the 700 Club about 3 years ago. My husband asks me to mention that those who signed up for the newsletter should expect to receive the January-February issue. You will not be able to get the November-December issue. It doesn't work that fast on the computer. And if there are any who still would like to see me or get an autograph or whatever, I will be in the exhibit area following this meeting. My topic, you already know, is the simplified life, a simplified life. I've tried to emphasize God's providence, His mysterious and unpredictable and unaccountable workings. The song that we've just heard is a reminder of that. God does not discuss things with us. He does not define things for us. He doesn't tell us that He's going to give us a blueprint of everything that's going to happen. He simply gives us the infrangible promise. Everything that happens fits into a pattern for good. So we need not know how it fits. We need to remember that it fits. And we thought last night about Mary, how she surrendered gladly and unreservedly to the undefined, faithfully obedient and active in everything that was needed for the fulfillment of her duties, the ordinary duties of the moment, and submissive, humble, and self-forgetting in everything else. She disengaged herself from her feelings, which is something that most of us have to do very often when it comes to obedience to God. We obey not because we feel good about it, not because we're in the mood to obey, but because we want honestly to be followers of Jesus Christ. So how shall we think about this simplified life? Crucial passage, familiar verses probably to many of you, Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Those of us who long for a simplified life probably do so because we do often feel tired and overburdened. And Jesus has given us the formula for peace. 3 things: come to me, take my yoke, and learn. And I picture that yoke as being the double yoke for oxen. 2 oxen are forced to work in harmony when they are under that yoke. And the yoke, which I believe Jesus must have been talking about here, is the doing of the Father's will. That was the yoke under which Jesus bent his neck. And so he says to you and me, if we are tired and overburdened, longing for rest, come, I will give it to you, but you must take my yoke. That means we must bend our necks under the yoke that Jesus also bears along with us, the will of the Father. You remember Jesus said, I came not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. And then we're to learn. As we come and bend our necks, we are to learn. And he tells us that we must learn his gentleness and his humility. Meekness in the King James Version. I am meek and lowly. Meekness never means weakness. The Old Testament tells us that the most meek man that ever lived was Moses. None of us would think of Moses as being a weak man. And surely we know that our Savior Jesus was not a weak man. He said, I am meek. But the word also means gentle, teachable, open, receptive. Are you gentle and teachable and open and receptive? Someone was reminding me last night of a little story that I've told about my dear Canadian mom. She was one of the many spiritual mothers who have blessed my life, and her name was Mrs. Cunningham. I called her Mom Cunningham. I met her when I was a Bible school student at Prairie Bible Institute in Alberta. And many years later, after each of us had been widowed, we were together talking about what it's like to be widowed. Our husbands had fairly recently died. And she said to me in her wonderful Scottish accent, "Oh, Betty dear." She always called me Betty dear. "You think of so many things that you shouldn't have done. And you think of so many things that you wish you had done for him." And I said, "Lord, why didn't you show me?" And he said, "Because you weren't ready to be shown." I hope that there are many here this morning who are ready to be shown. But it does take coming to Jesus, accepting the yoke, and learning gentleness and humility. Someone has said, rest is not quitting the busy career. And that word career, used in those days, 200 years ago, meant whatever our work happens to be, not in the very limited sense in which career is used today. Rest is not quitting the busy career. Rest is the fitting of self to its sphere. We've been talking about God's assigned portion, the sphere, the position, the place in which God puts us. Are you prepared to fit yourself into that place, which may be a lowly one, it may be a hidden one, it may seem to you like a very cramped one, but you will find rest as you come and take the yoke of Jesus upon you and fit yourself into the sphere as Jesus did. Think of how he fitted himself into a virgin's womb. Talk about a cramped space. Think of how he was born like any other human child, passing through that confined birth canal, he who made the worlds, and submitting to being a little child who cries and hurts himself and needs a mother. We are to fit ourselves to the sphere in which God has put us. Now, how can we obtain a simplified life? The first condition is accepting the will of God. Doing everything for God. These things go together. It's very difficult for me to separate things necessarily into points 1, 2, 3, and 4 because they're almost simultaneous and interchangeable. Accepting the will of God and doing everything for God means accepting my place, accepting my work, accepting my children, accepting my husband, accepting my lack of a husband, or whatever. Acceptance, glad, wholehearted, yes, Lord kind of acceptance. And then the willingness to offer myself back to Him with thanksgiving and doing everything, all that I am, all that I do, all that I suffer, all that I have, offering that back to Him. Now, probably many of you have thought about offering to God all that you are, and perhaps all that you have, and perhaps all that you do, but perhaps you have not thought about offering to God your sufferings. It wasn't until my second husband was dying of cancer that I began very dimly and slowly to understand a little bit about what the New Testament clearly teaches, that suffering is a gift. Paul said, "Unto you it is given not only to believe, but also to suffer." And what am I to do with every gift that God gives me? Receive it with thanksgiving and offer it back. Offer up your children, offer up your marriage, offer up your hopes, your dreams, your sorrows, and offer up your sufferings. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about doing everything for God. Now, if Christianity is not practical, if it doesn't make a difference, a daily, hourly difference in your ordinary life, your most routine, humdrum life, it's not Christianity. Christianity is practical or it's nothing. And in my current newsletter, the September-October one, I have an article entitled "What Love Does," and I'll read you a little bit of it. At a conference where I was speaking about the little sacrifices of love, I suggested that if, for example, your husband drops his clothes on the floor and leaves them there, you might, instead of nagging, your views on the subject have been well known to him for a long time, simply pick them up. That sort of suggestion doesn't go over well these days. We're terrified of being walked on or becoming codependent or enablers. Am I ringing any bells out there? So one woman's questions following the talk were, why shouldn't my husband change and quit dropping his clothes? As if I had suggested that her husband shouldn't change. As if I had suggested that it's fine for a husband to drop his clothes. It's crazy. It's stupid. It's selfish, isn't it? But I wasn't talking to husbands. I was talking to wives. So her second question was, well, if he doesn't, then how do I handle the resentment that I feel? Now, my dear, precious sisters in the Lord, how do we handle any emotion that we can't handle? What do you expect me to say to this? Well, these were my answers to her questions. Number one, about why shouldn't her husband change, it has become perfectly clear that I cannot change him. We cannot change our husbands. Most of us can think of one or two tiny ways in which we might like to. But forget it. It's not going to work, so forget it. You might change him by a gentle and quiet spirit and by praying for him and keep your mouth shut. You know, Peter says in 1 Peter 3, he might be won, he may be won without a word being spoken. And yesterday morning we heard the preacher talking about the woman trying to get her husband to paint the house. When she finally shut up, guess what he did? He painted the house. Now, as for the second question, how do I handle the resentment I feel? Here the question pierces to the heart. My heart my attitude toward the man, which reveals my attitude toward Jesus himself. For what I do to one of his brothers, I do to him. Remember, Jesus said, inasmuch as you've done it for one of the least of these my brothers, you've done it for me, or you've done it to me. Our treatment of other people is our treatment of Christ. So, as I reminded my daughter Valerie in the book that I wrote as a wedding present to her, Let Me Be a Woman, you marry a sinner. There simply isn't anything else to marry. So the husband sins against his wife. And let us wives never forget, he too married a sinner. If he sins in being thoughtless, by dropping his clothes, for example, and my reaction is sinful, two wrongs don't make a right. Most questions about relationships can be answered quite simply if we ask ourselves this question: what does love do? And I know of one woman who made this complaint about her husband dropping clothes all over the place. And someone asked her, well, how long do you think it would take you if you picked up all his clothes every day? And she thought about it a minute, and she said, well, I guess probably about 20 minutes. And so the question then came to her, is 20 minutes a day worth saving your marriage? Spending 20 minutes a day, is it worth it in order to save your marriage? Clothes on the floor constitute, at worst, a small burden. This, if not accepted as soon as we find that we are not in a position to change it, becomes an irritation, which becomes resentment, which becomes real anger, and eventually, along with all the irritations not accepted for the love of God, full-dress hatred. Whoever hates his brother walks in darkness. He does not know where he's going because the darkness has blinded him. Surely the questioner would protest, she does not hate her husband, but she certainly hates what he does. And marriages break up when small things accumulate and resentments build. Love is the intention of unity. Resentment is the destroyer of unity. Amy Carmichael wrote, if I am soft to myself and slide comfortably into the vice of self-pity and self-sympathy, if I do not, by the grace of God, practice fortitude, then I know nothing of Calvary love. How trivial our complaints appear in the light of Calvary love. Obedience is the key to wisdom. It's in doing what God tells us to do that we find the answers to the things we don't know what to do about. Simple obedience opens the way, and the way becomes clear and simple. And I do believe that countless millions of hours, not to mention billions of dollars, are wasted because people would rather have somebody else tell them what to do than do the thing they already know they're supposed to do, which would have turned on a spotlight on the thing that they were asking questions about. Do this thing that God is telling you to do. It's amazing how obedience opens your eyes to the next thing. Do the first duty, the second duty becomes clear. I have found that over and over and over again. For example, I lose my pen every once in a while, and I don't like to lose a nice gold cross pen that somebody gave me. I couldn't tell you how many times I've lost that thing. And when it happens at home, I have to ransack my study, turn out the wastebaskets, go through everything in a frantic haste in order to get on with my work. And I've discovered that what the Lord is saying to me in a still small voice in a case like that is, you don't need that pen right now. You've got another pen if you've got to have a pen. You've also got a computer. It happens to be time to turn on the computer right now. Forget about the pen. Do the first job first. And then, like magic, God puts into my mind the one place I didn't look for the pen. And I find it. It's a very little thing, but loaded with spiritual significance for me. Take my yoke upon you. Do everything for God. Unite yourself with him by an upward glance. You can do that in your kitchen, standing at the sink. Unite yourself with him by an upward glance and overflowing heart. Secondly, do all things, do the next thing quietly and calmly. Now this wonderful, life-changing, liberating, and marvelously simplifying principle, do the next thing, is one of the watchwords of my life. My mother taught it to me. I taught it to my daughter. And when my daughter was having baby number 5, I had the privilege of staying in her home and taking care of the 4 that were there. And that evening, bless her sweetheart, right after the baby had been born, she called me up to ask how I was doing. And I said, well, I'm doing fine, sweetheart. I said, your children really are wonderfully obedient. They are obedient, they're respectful, but there's an awful lot of confusion and noise and just things going on all the time in this house. And there's always so many things to do. I can't get over how much there is to do. I've only had one child. Now, I did grow up in a home of 6, but my mother managed to make it look very easy to take care of 6 children and keep everything in order. So I said, I can't help thinking all day long as I go from this to that to the other thing, how does Val do it? And what on earth is she going to do when she comes home with a nursing baby that takes about 6 hours a day? And she just laughed. And she said, Mama, don't think about all you have to do. Just do what you taught me. Do the next thing. She said, that's the only way I get through a day. I don't try to think about all that has to be done. I only say, Lord, what's the next thing? And I do that. And she's told me that there are times when sometimes it looks as though there are 7 things which demand equal attention at once. What does she do in a case like that? She drops on her knees and says, Lord, I don't know which is the next thing. Show me. And whatever the Lord brings to her mind, that's the thing she gets up off her knees and does. Now, this wonderful concept comes from an old English parsonage down by the sea. I don't know where it is, but this is where we got this concept. It's a poem from an old English parsonage down by the sea. There came in the twilight a message for me. Its quaint Saxon legend, deeply engraven, hath, it seems to me, teaching from heaven. And on through the hours the quiet words ring, like a low inspiration, do the next thing. Many a questioning, many a fear, many a doubt hath its quieting here. Moment by moment, let down from heaven, time, opportunity, guidance are given. Fear not tomorrows, child of the King. Trust them with Jesus. Do the next thing. Do it immediately. Do it with prayer. Do it reliantly, casting all care. Do it with reverence, tracing his hand, who placed it before thee with earnest command. Stayed on omnipotence, safe neath his wing, leave all resultings, say it with me, do the next thing. Looking to Jesus, ever serener, working or suffering, be thy demeanor in his dear presence, the rest of his calm, the light of his countenance be thy psalm. Strong in his faithfulness, praise and sing. Then, as he beckons thee, say it, do the next thing. Will you forget that? I hope not. I hope you're not going to forget that. Now do it quietly and calmly. The rule of St. Benedict in his monastery hundreds of years ago was that all work was to be done without haste and without sloth. I think that's a wonderful rule. There is no need for frantic rushing around. There's no need for haste. There can be calm and peace and order, and there doesn't need to be sloth. Do all work without haste and without sloth. Everything reduced to the purest and simplest commitment to the will of God. What is the will of God for you? Well, obviously, if there are dirty dishes in the sink, the will of God for you is to do the dishes. If there's dirty laundry, the will of God is to do the laundry. Now, what is the Christian way of doing the dishes? Doesn't make any difference which detergent you use. That's not in the Bible. But there is a Christian way of doing the dishes, and the first condition is gladness. Think about that one. Frankly, I love housework. I love doing dishes. I love doing laundry because I love to bring order out of chaos. Writing a book is bringing order out of chaos. I have a stack of notes like this. I've got piles and piles of resources. I have to discipline myself to put this into some kind of a reasonable shape so that it can be between two covers. Bringing order out of chaos. Combing your hair in the morning. You look in the mirror, first thing in the morning, what do you see? Chaos. So you comb your hair. That's the will of God. You make your bed. It's the will of God. And if you have a wonderful husband like mine, we make our bed together. It takes less than 1 minute to make a double bed if you do it together. So my husband always is on call. He's in his little office, not very far from the bedroom, and I say, and he comes. Now that's the only thing that I ever whistle to him about, but he comes immediately. Sometimes he infuriates me by saying, "Coming, Mother." But I never asked him to do it, I mean, it was his idea. So he just wants to know when I'm ready to make the bed, so he comes. But the will of God's not that complicated. What is the Christian way of doing dishes? Gladly, thoroughly, at once. Whatever needs to be done, you do it. You don't need to drop to your knees and pray, "Now, Lord, should I wash these dishes or shouldn't I?" And I knew a girl in college that did that. She was in the same dormitory with me, and she would actually pray while her roommate was cleaning her half of the room as to whether or not the Lord wanted her to clean her half. Do the next thing. Do it quietly and calmly. Now, what nourishes my heart and banishes fretting and brings peace? Doing it for God. Fulfillment, ladies, is not found in a particular job. Fulfillment is found in doing the job for God. I don't find it more fulfilling to write a book or to prepare a talk than I do to clean the bathroom. At certain times, it's God's will for me to clean the bathroom. At another time, it's God's will for me to iron. At another time, it's God's will for me to cook. At another time, it's God's will for me to sit down to my desk and write letters or do a newsletter or whatever. But everything is God's assignment. He has assigned me my portion and my cup. And He has made my lot secure, and so I can gladly do it for Him, and I know that I am doing the will of God. Do it quietly, calmly, joyfully, gladly, thoroughly, and you can tell your children that the Christian way of doing dishes is to get them clean. Number 3, refuse worry. Absolutely refuse it. Your life gets very complicated when you start worrying about things because you're directing energy into anxiety, which needs to be directed into doing the will of God. And we are forbidden to worry. It says in Philippians 4, don't worry about anything whatever. Don't worry about anything whatever. Now, we think sometimes that certain things are legitimate worries. There is no such thing as a legitimate worry. God is in charge. He is at work. Bring it to him in prayer, with thanksgiving, in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Let your request be made known unto God. And leave it there. Just leave it with God. And I can never resist these poems because to me it makes the concepts memorable. And here's a little one by Annie Johnson Flint. She wrote hundreds, probably thousands of wonderfully helpful poems, many of which have been set to music. But this one helps me constantly around the house as I feel overwhelmed at times with all the things that there are to do. He's helping me now this moment, though I may not see it or hear, perhaps by a friend far distant, perhaps by a stranger near, perhaps by a spoken message, perhaps by the printed word, in ways that I know and know not. I have the help of the Lord. He's keeping me now this moment, however I need it most, perhaps by a single angel, perhaps by a mighty host, perhaps by the chain that frets me, perhaps, or the walls that shut me in ways that I know and know not. He keeps me from harm and sin. He's guiding me now, this moment, in pathways easy or hard, perhaps by a door wide open, perhaps by a door fast barred, perhaps by a joy withholden, perhaps by a gladness given. In ways that I know and know not, he's leading me up to heaven. Do not smother yourself with troubles. Things which we imagine will ruin us turn into blessings. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Things which we want to worry about turn out to be blessings and mercies. God forbids us to worry, casting all your care upon him, for it matters to him about you. That is the translation that our Greek teacher gave us in one of our devotionals at college from that verse in Hebrews. That is a legitimate translation of the verse that's in King James, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. It matters to him about you. Don't you love that? Do not smother yourself with troubles, wishes, worries, or longings, or gotta-haves. We've got an awful lot of gotta-haves in these days, haven't we? Just be simple and leave everything to God. And a French writer says, beware of imprudently engaging in any of those disquieting speculations which waylay the spirit. I'm very good at engaging in disquieting speculations. It's my nature to always think of the worst case, the greatest calamity, the fact that everything's going to fall apart, nothing I do is going to be done right. It's my nature. And so am I supposed to say, well, that's just the way I am, gang, and so there isn't anything I can do about it? Yes, there is something I can do about it. I can bring it to God and commit it to his lordship. And after all, he does manage to run the galaxies and keep the stars where they belong. And that molecular dance, which scientists tell us is going on in every cell, every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every year. It's God that keeps all those things in order. Do you think maybe, possibly, he might be able to help you manage your life? To simplify it? The greatest simplifier I know is being a child of God. because then I don't have an unlimited array of options. What is the will of God for me? That's what I want to do, not a smorgasbord. Well, I'll do this if it feels good or what tastes good or whatever. The will of God. Lord, what will you have me do? And he will show you. Very simple. Then you just do it. And so often when we think we've got a huge problem, the problem looks like a mountain to us because there is a simple answer that we do not want to obey. If God is telling you one simple thing to do, which may not look to you like anything that has to do with this problem, do that one simple thing. You might be amazed at how suddenly the sky clears and the problem dissipates because you've done the will of God. It's a spiritual principle. We find it all through Scripture. Now, some very practical suggestions, because I know there are many young mothers here, and my heart has a very special, sensitive place for young mothers. My daughter is pushing 40 now. She'll be 40 in February, but I still think of her as being a very young mother with young children. Her children are ages 17 down to 1. And we talk a lot about how to organize things. She asks my advice. I'm a greatly blessed mother in having not only a daughter, but even a son-in-law who asks for advice. I think it's a very unusual grace in young people that they ask for advice. And I would earnestly advise you young people, don't be afraid to ask advice. If you don't have Christian parents, go to the older people in your church and ask advice, how to love your children, how to love your husband, how to organize your home. And you older people, you gray heads, are you available? I want to know, where are the older women in the church that are supposed to be teaching the younger ones? I've had older women use all kinds of excuses. Well, I raised my kids, I'd done my job, now it's time for me to do something for myself. Ride around in an RV, go on a cruise, go back to college and get a degree or whatever. But perhaps there's somebody that needs them. Another excuse I hear is, well, young people don't want to listen to us. That's true, most of them don't, but there are some that do. So I would urge you to start praying, you older women, Lord, show me the younger woman who needs me. Show me how to help her. Make myself available to her. So I'm thankful for a daughter who asks advice. And one of the things that I've never had to tell her, because she figured it out all by herself, number one, and I put this number one in simplifying your life, get up early. Now, we've been fed a bunch of poppycock about morning people and afternoon people. And just about everybody thinks they're a morning person because they don't like to jump out of bed with alacrity the minute the alarm clock goes off. We didn't know anything about that when I was growing up, and my father got up between 4:30 and 5 every morning. Nobody ever told him that he wasn't a morning person. He never found it easy, but he said, I had to start the night before. So if you're going to get up early, you have to start the night before, which means what? You have to go to bed early, and how are you going to do that? With all the things that everybody in your church thinks you have to do, and all the things that you think you ought to be doing, and the things that all your friends are doing. You're going to have to eliminate them. You're going to have to learn to say no. What matters most in your life? Is it the will of God? Is that what matters most? Is it a peaceful home? Is it obedience? Jesus got up a great while before day. I don't think it was because he was a morning person. I really don't think that that was the reason. His first priority was time with his Father. Now, God will be there. God will be there when you get up. So rearrange your day, do anything you have to do, drastic changes, whatever, but get yourself up early. And ladies, get yourself dressed. I know women who slop around until 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning in a dirty housecoat and a pair of slippers Or they throw on a stained sweatshirt and a pair of sweatpants, and I cannot think of anything more hideously unfeminine. Now, I'm not looking around and seeing if there's anybody here in a sweatshirt. I'm sure some of you have very neat-looking sweatshirts, and you look great in them. But there is a great deal to be said for thinking feminine. How can I look most feminine? What is most distinctively feminine? Well, it's not sweatpants and sweatshirts. Those are unisex, aren't they? At any rate, my plea is look civilized at the breakfast table. Get your hair done, do something about getting some clothes on. And if you have a wonderful husband who will help you make the bed before breakfast, then it's a wonderful feeling when you come up later in the day and you walk into the bedroom and the bedroom looks neat. You don't have to fuss with that one. Secondly, a rule should be in your home that there has to be a place for everything and everything in its place. Now, if there is not a place for everything, then perhaps your house is too small for all the stuff you've got, so what have you got to do? Going to have to start sorting. 3 piles. Put away, give away, throw away. And throw away should probably be the biggest pile. Or take it to the thrift shop or whatever. But you've got to do it. You've just got to do it. You've got to discipline yourself to learn to throw things away. And one of the things that I know young mothers find very difficult is throwing away all those cute pictures that their 2-year-olds have drawn and all those little things that they bring home from Sunday school that they toiled over for an hour that you have no idea what to do with. My daughter has come to the conclusion that in their house there's no way that they can keep everything for all 8 children. And so she shows the children the pile of things that has been accumulated during that week. You might have just a little folder for all of each child's drawings and things. And the child must learn to select 3 things out of 25 that he can keep. That's discipline, and that's training from the very beginning. Don't keep everything. Now, see, I'm just really dishing it out here and telling you, this is what you got to do, and you got to do it my way. Of course you don't. You can reject all the Elisabeth Elliot opinions. They're not worth much of anything. But you just might be needing some help on these things. So I would say, place for everything and everything in its place. And I've got to read you one more poem. I was told that we don't have to be out of here till 1 o'clock. I promise you I'm not going to talk till 1 o'clock. I'll be through in a few minutes. But this is something that rang some bells with a lot of people. Things, things, things. On the tables, on the floor, tucked away behind the door, on the shelves and on the chairs, dangerously on the stairs, bureaus crammed and closets filled, boxes packed and boxes spilled. Bundles everywhere you go, heaps and piles and overflow of things, things, things. Things of value, worthless trash. Things preserved or gone to smash. Ancient things or things just bought. Why did you buy it? How much is enough? Common things and things far sought. Things you mean to throw away. Things you hope to use someday. Cellar, attic, all between, on exasperating scene of things, an exasperating scene of things, things, thing. And so let me put in a parenthesis here. Hudson Taylor went through everything he possessed every year. And anything which he had not used during that year, he felt duty-bound before God to give to a Chinese who needed it. Because if you got through the year without it, you don't need it. Somebody else does. So don't accumulate things you mean to throw away. Things that take our precious time, hold us from the life sublime, things that only gather dust, things that rot and things that rust, things that mold and things that freeze, things that harbor foul disease, things that mock us and defy, till at last we grimly die of things, things, things. Let me cease to be their fool. Let me fly their crafty rule. Let me with unsparing knife cut the canker from my life. Broad and clear and all serene, let me make my mansion clean. Now and evermore to be calm, unfettered, gladly free, free from things, things, things. Now, if there is a place for everything, teach your children to put the thing back. If you keep the Scotch tape in a drawer in the kitchen, make sure that everybody in the family knows that that's where the Scotch tape is, and that's where the Scotch tape has got to be put back. And all the rest of the little things that are so easy to lose, a place for everything. Where does it belong? Well, every time I go to visit my grandchildren, we get organized again. One of them met me at the door and said, "Oh, Granny's here, we've all got to get organized." But they actually ask me for help. My little 5-year-old granddaughter Evangeline she asked me to help her organize her drawers. And so we spent 5 minutes learning how to fold her t-shirts and roll them up and put them in a shoebox. So help your children, but they have to know this is where the thing belongs. If they can't find something, the question is, where does it belong? Okay, if it's not there, whose fault is it? Line upon line, line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept. That is the way you teach children. That's what the Bible says. And it amounts to nagging, doesn't it? But try to do it with a sweet smile and with patience. Number 3, okay, if you've lost track, number 1 is get up early. Number 2, a place for everything. Number 3, a quiet hour for your children. Now, this is something which is really wonderfully rest-giving. When Valerie's children have become the age where they no longer want to take an afternoon nap, they are given to understand very clearly that there's still a quiet hour. And in the afternoon, every child has to be alone for a solid hour. No TV, no records, no Walkmans, no games, no conversation. This, number 1, it teaches the child solitude, which we need in our human lives. We need solitude. Number 2, it teaches them to be resourceful and think of ways in which they can spend that time. They can spend it in any way other than ways that make noise. They cannot talk to another child. And when the child is too small to be able to read time, Valerie puts a timer in the room so that there is no running to Mama and saying, "Is my time up?" There's no running to the bathroom. There's no drinks of water or anything else. That has to be taken care of ahead of time. And it is wonderful. Valerie takes a 20-minute nap during that hour, and then she has 40 minutes to do things that she doesn't want to be bothered with children around when she's doing. So it's her salvation as well as the children. It's a great discipline. Number 4, a simplified life will be gained through a quiet spirit, which means keeping your mouth shut a lot of the time. A gentle and a quiet spirit. And number 5, here's a very simple one. All children that I know in today's world have too many toys. When our grandchildren come to our house, we have about 5 toys. We have a huge red fire engine. We have a little sort of a car that goes on a little wooden track. And we have 1 or 2 dolls. And it's just wonderful to me to see how those children find things to do without those toys. They find all sorts of things to do all by themselves. So your children really don't need very many toys. When we lived in the jungle, Valerie grew up in a jungle where we had no place to put anything, and she had never had more than 1 doll and nothing else that I can remember in the way of toys. But since your children do have toys and they have too many toys, one way of making less clutter and having less to pick up at the end of each day is by rotating the toys. Keep all the Legos in one box and have a week when they can play with Legos and they don't play with anything else. And have a week when they play with the dollhouse and they don't play with anything else. And so you put away those toys, and this is the week for this, that's the week for that. Just a suggestion. Anyway, many of these things and a whole lot more are covered in my book called The Shaping of a Christian Family. That is not a prescription, which is what I've been giving you just now, a prescription of how you could do some things. It's merely a description of the way my parents did things. And we 6 children feel very, very blessed in having grown up in an ordered and peaceful home. And when people would ask my parents, how is it that your home is peaceful and ordered, the answer was very simple: discipline. And you're not going to be able to discipline your children unless you discipline yourselves. And discipline doesn't mean punishment every time, not by any means. It's just making up your mind, what kind of a home do you want to have? How can I have it? I'll close with the words of that beautiful hymn, Dear Lord and Father of Mankind, is the first stanza, but then there's a verse that says, drop thy still dews of quietness till all our strivings cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. A joyful woman has a royal position, a measured portion, and a simplified life. God bless you.